Thank you for tuning in to another episode with Mrs. Danielle DeVita. I am a relationship and femininity coach. I've been married for 13 years, and my goal is to help both men and women be in relationships that's best for them. So today we're going to talk about being socially awkward while on the dating scene. Maybe you know that you're socially awkward. People often tell you, or maybe you don't know why you're not getting callbacks. And this is both men and women not receiving, callbacks, second dates, and things like that. And you're wondering, what is it about me? So maybe some of these things can help you. Besides being a relationship coach, I do have a background in communication. I have a bachelor's in mass communication. I have been writing for a long time. I am an author. I do have a book, Command Respect from the Woman You Want. You can definitely take a look at that book. You can go to my website, Mrs. Danielle DeVita. You can see a few blogs that I've done. I also have a master's in public and corporate communications. So I'm able to help different departments or for people within a department to be able to speak to their constituents, right? So a lot of times people have a hard time speaking, and not necessarily public speaking, but just speaking to another person. And there are a few things and that will be the reason for that. So before I go into ways to overcome social awkwardness, I want to first talk about ways that you would be socially awkward. And so if these fit that category for you, you may fall in the category of being socially awkward while dating. So the first thing that I would say that's what makes someone socially awkward is someone who evades your space, right? They don't understand the protecting your bubble thing. There's people that like to, be too close when they're speaking to you, or they're too touchy feeling and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Typically, social awkwardness is really at a point where you're making others feel uncomfortable to be able to talk to you. They're always too close. They talk too close to my face. They, are too touchy. Some people like to touch the shoulder or the hand, and a lot of people don't like that. If you're someone who does that, then people may call you socially awkward. Maybe you are someone who speaks kind of loudly or blurts out things. A good example is if you watch the TV show The King of Queens, there is a man named Arthur. He's a father-in-law of Kevin James' character, right? And he sometimes just, out of that blue, he just blurts things out really loudly, right? And different, weird behavior. And they're using their outside voice instead of their inside voice. So people who typically use their outside voice when it's not called for would be socially awkward as well. And I'm not saying that you've done this one time. This is something that you often do that makes the conversation awkward, right? People may call you weird or awkward. Also, it could be that maybe you have too many weird pauses in between conversations. Like if someone asks you a question and you just have this blank look on your face and don't say anything, and then you're like, yeah. So it's like there's no rhythm in the conversation. Ba 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 ba. Right? So you don't end on your voice is, there's no inflation in your voice, right? It's just either monotone or too many awkward pauses between responding, between conversations. Another thing would be that maybe you speak too much. Like it's almost like a run-on sentence with you. You don't breathe. Think about the person that when you're in an Uber and the driver is doing all this continual talking and they don't give you time to, say something. They're just going from one thing to the next. Hey, you want some water? Do you want this? And it's like, slow down, right? And also think about people who don't think about Uber again. Maybe they don't understand social cues. Like when a conversation is organically over, they don't know how to end that conversation. They just want to, keep talking. They're not realizing that the conversation is over. I know people who don't know how to end a conversation. Maybe they want to end it. You can tell they want to end it, but they don't know how to be like, okay, well, that's all I want to say. Thanks for blah, blah, blah. Take care. They just continue on and fumble. And a lot of times that has to do with nervousness. People are nervous, so they kind of have what we call word vomit. They're either saying too much, they don't know what to say, their words are fumbling together, and they don't know how to come to an end. Another way someone could be socially awkward is they just TMI. they say all the wrong things that you would not. It's inappropriate, maybe either in mixed company, maybe the inappropriate joke, maybe they're just saying too much that you don't know this person and they're just letting it all out. Something that you would say to a really good friend, they're just saying it first time meeting you. All right. I've been in situations where I've gone, to get something done and I know their whole life story. It's kind of awkward, especially when it's an intense life story they're giving you. I think about another episode on King of Queens where they were trying to find a couple the main characters were trying to find another couple to hang out with. And Carrie was hanging out with this girl and she just awkwardly said, how is, sex life with you? Because with me, I'm so tiny and I have a hard time. And it was like, what kind of, why too much information, right? Another thing would be you're just saying things that are taboo, right? And it's not just necessarily things about sex. It could be just you're saying weird things about your bodily fluid and things that people just don't want to hear. You're just oversharing, right? Another way someone could be socially awkward is they're staring at you too much. Like they're literally staring you in the eye, and it's almost like they're not blinking. Another way someone can be socially awkward is they don't really show any type of empathy when they're speaking. And what I mean is they take things literal. You could be like, oh my God, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. They'll be like, well, why would you eat a horse? And blah, 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 blah. They don't really understand like when someone is being sarcastic. They don't know what to say when someone says something sensitive or sentimental, like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I was late. I just found out that my aunt died and I got this phone call. And they're like, okay, well, so what time are you going to lunch today? And it's like, understand, it's part of understanding social cues, but having a little bit of empathy. When I think about this, I think about on the TV show The Office. Dwight is someone who kind of lacks empathy and sometimes take things a little too literal as well. So he doesn't understand social cues and he doesn't understand what to say in situations where you need to be more empathetic. So a lot of times people can be, and this is common, I would say today, people are taking things from the internet and they're relaying that in their conversations. So if a guy would say something like, so we're on the first date, and he would say, so what value do you bring to the table? I think it's socially awkward. I think it's socially awkward to bring up all of these dating things that's online that people are talking about, and then bringing it on the first date in that format. And same thing with women. Sometimes they're too interviewee type, right? There's no organic conversation going on. So these are some things that you can be socially awkward. Let me go into how a little bit more of why you may have these things and how to overcome it. The first thing would be you don't get out as much. Maybe your job, has you in the computer or doing something that requires a one-on-one, right? You're maybe just either you're doing it yourself or just maybe you have to deal with one other person, but you don't really have to collab with people often. So you're not really dealing with groups and having to speak to multiple people. You're just either doing an individual type of activity or very little contact with others. So sometimes when it happens, you have very little conversation with people or seeing how other people have conversations and what's considered a social norm in a conversation. If you have a tech job or a job that just requires an individual activity, you can kind of be a little stoic, right? You don't really have any personality to you. You just not really showing any emotion when you have conversation, not being energetic, or you don't know how to keep a conversation going because your job doesn't require much conversation versus a person who's on a sales job, right? And always having to interact with people. So understanding that you need to get out more is what you should do. Be out, go grocery shopping out in the public. If you're always in your home and not going places, you're not going to interact with others. So you're not going to get used to or be comfortable with having conversations more than simple yes or no, right? That would be the first thing. I think in this day and age, a lot of people, especially after, Rona, right? The 19, a lot of people are in that place where they're just not having conversations. Maybe you are someone who likes to do online dating, long distance dating, and you're not out and about having conversations with someone, especially of the opposite gender. Sometimes people who are socially awkward have, awkwardness with all genders, right? So children, everyone, right? So you want to make sure that, especially with the opposite gender, start getting out more, mingling more, so you can interact with others. The other thing I would say is, number two, is that you are, maybe not having the appropriate amount of contact, meaning that you are not confident. I know this guy, and he was very decent looking, very, a guy seems intelligent, and he has conversations, but it seems like every time he's talking to you, he kind of looks away. And at least from what I see, it's a sign of there's no confidence there. Maybe you're not confident in what you have to say, or you're always constantly worried about what that person is thinking of you and what you look like. Try to have eye contact. Again, not too much eye contact, but have enough eye contact shows that you're confident and you're intentional in what you're saying, right? And I think that if you're intentional in what you're saying and you're confident and you're knowledgeable in so make sure when you do have conversations, you have conversations in which you're knowledgeable. It makes it easier to feel more confident than try to be prideful and have a conversation that you don't even know what you're talking about. So definitely do that. If you have issues with confidence, definitely look at some videos. If you're a man, look at some videos with a man that's telling you on how to be more confident. If you are not confident as a woman, I have a lot of videos on self-love, being confident and assertive of who you are. Understanding your abilities and being confident in what you can do is what you should focus on instead of what you cannot do. If you tend to focus on things that you cannot do, things that you cannot control, you will tend to have a lot of insecurities there. But if you're secure in the things that you know you can do, stand firm in that. All right. So another thing I would say, number three, that you may have some things that's helping or things that causing you to be socially awkward, but you can overcome it, would be processing your thoughts. There's a lot of people who stutter. There's a lot of people who they do a lot of like just like that. Like they're literally people that they literally can't get the words out their mouth. And you're like, slow down, breathe, and say it. Sometimes it could be nervousness. And this is not even when they're speaking out in the public. There are some people who can interact in a day-to-day in real life, but if they're on camera or around a lot of people, or in public, then they have a hard time speaking, right? So that's a different issue, like public speaking versus just interacting with others. But if you're like that, even just speaking to anyone when you are feeling nervous or you're not sure what to say, how to get your words out, make sure that you are doing a lot of thought processing. Sometimes people speak, so quickly as soon as they think about it, and that they can't fully get their words out. Have you heard someone who speaks fast, or they're trying to think about something and then mash their words together? So they may say blot, and they meant to say a lot, but they also wanted to say a little bit. So they kind of mash the words together. Sometimes you can speak slowly, and that will allow your words to be able to come out, right? If you speak a lot, like this video is going to have to be a little bit longer, then yes, you can kind of have your words tongue twisted and things like that. But the best time to, when you're having these situations, is to try to have these kind of conversations with people you do know. Speak slowly, think about what you're going to say, and then say it. Now, you don't want to have this awkward pause where you're pausing way too long before you say something. I'm going to name 3 people who I believe, just from listening to their conversations, that they're really good at thinking things through before they say it, which means they're intentional in what they're trying to say. They're not really want to make a mistake and say certain things. And you may know because there are pauses, but the pauses are filled with words to cover when they're thinking. I'll give you an example. Barack Obama is one. If you notice when he speaks, when he's thinking about something, he may say words like, instead of using he may say, well, that at the same time he's saying well and drawing it out, he's actually thinking about the next thing that's going to come out of his mouth instead of just speaking so quickly, right? So he pauses often, but pauses with things like, well, you see, and that's really great. When he says things like that, he's really thinking about his next thought. And the things that come out his mouth are intentional. If you watch his body language and listen to him often, you'll see that. Another person I would say is Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington is one I feel like he's very intentional in the things that he's going to say. I think he does a good job of saying things, and you may hear a long drawn out, well, and things like that. I believe, this is just my belief, just watching his body language and listening to him, that he's thinking about his next thought and then he is saying it, and the things that are coming out his mouth are intentional. Another person who I think is very intentional is Will Smith. Aside from the thing with Jada where he slapped Chris Rock, he seems to be intentional in both words and actions, that he likes to think things through. Even in his movies, he's a thinker and a visionary. So he's not one to just pop off and say and do anything. Some situations, if they're sentimental or emotional, can allow you to step out your frame. And what I mean by that is you're not picture perfect the way you thought it out in your head. Sometimes your emotions can rise and allow you to snap out that frame and do things that you would not otherwise do. Outside of that, he seems to be a visionary and a thinker, and one who his moves are intentional, and he thought long and hard before doing them. So those are three people I can name. I truly believe that if you're someone who, again, like I said, stutter or having a hard time getting your words out, do that. If you are one, think about an interview. If someone asked you a question on the spot and you didn't do any research, you didn't prep for typical questions that would be asked, you would fumble over your words. So if you're going on a date, do your research. Do your research, not necessarily in particular about that person, but do your research on type of questions and things that you would ask on a date so it can be conversational. So I'll give an example for an interview, and then I'll give one about dating. So with the interview, if someone said, what are three words that would describe you? If you don't know, you may be like, and it's very simple. It's a simple question. What are three words that would describe you? Right? And so if you don't know that, you will fumble. So think about this now in dating. If someone asked you a question that you weren't prepared for, either because now you don't know the answer because you never thought about it, or maybe you don't want to give them the answer, so you're trying to think of something to say, which is probably going to be a lie or something aside from the truth, so you can't get the words out because now you're thinking of a lie, or you're just uncomfortable and nervous in talking about it. So all of those things, not being confident, being too nervous, or not doing enough research about things that you would say. Things that may be uncomfortable. So this goes to the next thing. Having deep conversations. When you have deep and more thoughtful conversations, you're less likely to fumble over certain things. So questions on dates, people may ask you about your past relationship, and that may seem awkward. So people may not want to talk about it, or they're going to lie about it. So they don't know what to say. My last relationship was, and you're like, that's a simple question. Why can't you answer it? Do you have any children? How long are you from here? So sometimes there are people who are elusive because they are going to think of a lie and they don't feel comfortable answering the question. I don't think that you should lie on dates. If you're not comfortable answering or responding to a certain question, then say so. Let's talk about first how to have these, organic conversations, right? So we're going to start with something surface level, and then we'll go deep, because it's not just deep conversations that makes it hard for people to be, have normal social cues and conversation. But I also think that Even with women, we do a lot of interviewee style conversations, and you want to make sure that it's organic and you can still get your answer across without being too, strict and interview like, right? And let's get started, right? So, if you are interested in this person and more about them, the first question you would ask is, so hey, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something casual, or are you looking for a relationship? So while you're eating, and you were probably talking about the restaurant or the place that you're at, so you're gonna have those basic conversations. That would be one of the first questions that lead into a deep dive question, but it could still be surface level. The minute they tell you, what you're looking for, then you can go into another conversation such as, so what are you looking for then in a partner? And assuming that they're saying they're looking for a relationship. But if they say they're looking, I'm just hanging out, I'm just casual, I'm new here, you'll be surprised that people tend to share more when you just ask basic questions. If you say, so, do you date often here in Miami? Are you from here or not? They could easily say, oh, no, I'm not from here. I'm from this place right here. I moved here because of my job or because of school. You learn so much just by asking, are you native? Or are you new to the area? Or how did you find out about this place? Do you come here often? Simple questions like that, people can tell you so much without you running off like this is a checklist, or without you saying, so what value do you bring to the relationship? Asking these questions you will learn so much about them, where they're from, if they have any siblings, all of these things by simple questions. Asking them, so, what do you do for work? Especially if they've already mentioned they came here because of work. Oh, so what do you do? Oh, great. Is that a passion, or is that something you always wanted to do? Easily they'll tell you what they love to do, what they don't like to do, how they got into it, what business they're trying to start up, their dreams. They can tell you so much from that. You can learn a lot about their values, how they think as the conversation continues. So a lot of times that people just want to have these strict and straightforward conversations when you could really just get to know the person and show some interest in them, right? And of course, using inside voice, right? Because sometimes people get passionate depending on what they're talking about, or they're going to discuss inappropriate topics that they should not be talking about. You should not be having conversations about abortion on the first date, about, religion and things about, certain stuff that it's a touchy topic. So you can find these things out by small conversations with people. So how's the dating scene like for you? This person could easily say, you know what? It's hard to find someone who's serious and committed. I really want a serious conversation. Or, it's hard because people only want me for my money. Like, you learn so much when you ask small questions, but showing interest. Also, I find that a lot of people are socially awkward because they don't know how to allow the other person to speak and listen. If you listen, then you have your next thing to say, right? Because if they are talking about this and then you just bounce around and talk about a completely different topic, that would make you socially awkward. People may say, this person is weird. I just brought up this and they're bringing up a completely unrelated conversation. But if you stay on a related topic and kind of parlay into something else, then it makes the conversation move organically. And that is how you can make sure that people see that you're interesting and that they're interesting, and then go from there. I would say some people are socially awkward also because they're not one to, and I think I mentioned it before, they're not one to be confident, right? So when you're not confident, you tend to say less. You tend to, have your head down. So your body language is awkward, which makes the other person feel awkward. People do feel awkward when they see your insecurities at display. Now, you definitely don't want to be with someone who's going to play on those insecurities, but you want to be someone who's confident, at least in, what you're wearing. So make sure you dress accordingly so you can feel comfortable. You don't want to overdress or underdress. You don't want to be wrinkled. You don't want to look weird. So a lot of times you need to prepare for these things. If you're going on a date, ask where they're going so you don't feel overdressed, so you don't look out of place. Now, if you happen to be out of place and the person didn't tell you, going with the flow is one of the best things you can do on a date. Instead of stressing about, what you have on and how you look, just go with the flow, and it takes away the awkwardness. I do think confidence can really take away the awkwardness because you're owning either your quirkiness or you're owning your personality, and people will see that you just have a peculiar personality rather than just being awkward. Because I know a lot of people that have, their personality is a little different, but I like it because they own it, right? So I think that you should own your personality. If you don't like the way you look, or you can change it. But if it's something you can't change, own it and just move on through it. There's women who are even overweight. There's men who are overweight and they own it. And because they own it and they're confident in it, I still think you should work through being more healthy. But if you own it, people won't look at that as a awkwardness. They'll say, okay, they have a certain level of energy. So making sure you have a certain level of energy will also make will make the conversation less awkward, especially if you want a relationship. Because if not, people are not going to call you back if they think that, they're boring, they're not energetic, their voice is dull. Oh, yeah, they don't seem to be interested in the conversation. So I would say that is a really big thing. Social media has a lot of people awkward because they tend to stare at their phone a lot, look down on their watch often, and it kind of destroys the conversation because people are like, yeah, do you need to go? And I do think that also plays in social awkwardness if this is something you do often, right? So even if it's not a necessarily social awkwardness, it is in a level of inappropriateness that makes people not want to continue to have conversations with you. If every time they're in a conversation with you, you're always on your phone or staring at it to the point that it just breaks the conversation and the organic mood of the conversation, right? So these are some things that can help you if you're socially awkward, even if you're not in a relationship, but just being able to overcome some of these things. But I noticed that in relationships, people are a lot more socially awkward because they're afraid of having that conversation with someone of the opposite gender. I think that you should do your research and figure out what kind of questions you should ask or find out on the first date if you are one who's not able to just spark a conversation. If you are not the icebreaker type of person, then I would look up conversations so you can ask. And try not to have too many awkward pauses. A lot of people have awkward pauses. When you're nervous, you don't want to do word vomit, but try to make sure that you have a rhythm in your conversation. When they say something, you say something. But these weird, are you from around here? Try to keep it constant. Oh, so are you from around here? No kidding. You know what? This is my first time being here. I want to try something on the menu. So do you, what kind of things do you like to eat? You may find out if they're a vegetarian. Oh, wow. So how long have you not been eating meat? Oh, really? You know what? I heard about that. I've been hearing a lot of things about, going vegan or being a vegetarian, going plant-based. Like, you can have these conversations. Oh, really? You know what? I haven't gotten there yet as far as how I'm eating, but I am working on working out more. Oh, cool. Where do you go? Oh, the gym. Like, these are conversations you can continue to have. So listening when the person says something is a way for you to jump in and have another conversation. No one likes this awkward pause. If you're someone who talks a little slower, thought process. Think about what you're going to say, all in your head, and then try to move it along. I know people who talk a little too slow, and it's kind of awkward. But make sure that if you are one, that you're listening to someone who is speaking slowly, at least, speak in, sound more interested, and that will allow them to continue on with their rhythm. Some people who have issues with stuttering talk a little slower. And again, some people may have autism. Like, you have to understand that there's a lot of people with actual, disabilities that could affect them. right? So you want to make sure that you are not making belittling people or being condescending or making people feel bad for being awkward. But if you do start to develop a relationship with them, I would go ahead and, once you get to know them, tell them a few things. If you never share things, people will never learn and grow. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to have this on the first date or say this to them on the first date. But if you don't plan on having another date with them, I think it's nice that people share why there won't be another date. You know what? It was nice meeting you. I don't know. I'm not sure it's going to work out. I think it's a little, awkward. If you feel comfortable in saying that. But if you haven't gotten there, but you have another like a date or so, a few dates, it's nice to share with someone. If you still like them and you want the relationship to continue, share with them the awkwardness that you see in them so maybe they can potentially make the change. All right. If you like more of my content, definitely go. If you like this video, watch more of my content by going to other videos on YouTube. You can also see me on the Philip Scott Show because I am there as well as a contributor. If you like Instagram, I am on there. I don't do as much content on Instagram and TikTok, but you will see the same content that I do on my Facebook page. But I am mainly on YouTube. I also have a Spotify platform where I kind of just do, I think it's just almost like a podcast style. Feminine Energy with Danielle DeVita. All right, go to my website to get more of my content and check out my new book that I have out. It's been out for a few months now. Command Respect from the Woman You Want from a Female's Point of View. All right, thank you for tuning in. Take care.